and welcome to Dustins Kaleidoscope. I am Dustin, and I have the pleasure of being here today with Hope Brooks, an author and the author of A Mother's Survival, Finding Balance Through the Storms. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
Great. And so, when I spoke to you a little bit about your book, but I'm really excited to talk to you because you cover so many different topics. But first, I want to get to your background. What is your background?
I was brought up in Brooklyn. I had my childhood in Brooklyn when marriage was a commitment. Okay. And family values were really valued very, very much in the world. I was brought up in an Italian home. My father was kind of like a dictator. He told my sister and I that we were girls, so we had to be teachers because when we grew up, we would come home at 3 o'clock and cook for our family. And so I followed his advice, even though I was very shy at the time and didn't think I could stand up before children or people. Eventually, I got my bachelor's and master's degree in elementary education and went on to get certification in special education as well. And I became certified in the states of New York and New Jersey. So altogether, I had a 38-year teaching career.
Wow, that's a long time.
It was a long time.
And you taught in both New Jersey and New York during those
34 years in New York, and then I retired and took a job in New Jersey, closer to my home where I lived.
Oh, okay. Okay, so part of that background is in your book, and that sort of, I know when we talked, you said that your book came about as a consequence of your retirement, and you had sort of a moment to pause, to reflect, and that's how your book came about. So what were some of the things that how did that happen? How did you even get to that point where you thought about writing the book?
Well, I had so many challenges through the years, beginning in my childhood.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. I was abused by my uncle.
Okay.
In my childhood. I was 11 years old at the time.
Wow.
I never talked about it. I kept it a secret, and it was very painful for me through the years. I didn't have the skill to open my heart until later on in life. At age 21, I married a very handsome man, but I had no knowledge at the time that he had a mental illness. And I lived with his illness for 10 years until he abandoned me and our 2 children, preschool children, and ran off with another woman. And I had to find strength to find out how I was going to take care of my babies. At the time, I wasn't working, and I had to go on food stamps. And I finally secured a teaching job again. And I started to attend workshops and support groups for divorced and separated people.
And so, Hope, all of these, you talk about the abuse as a child, you talk about your marriage, your first marriage, and you talk about just, being a person who's working every day. You had to be very resilient to overcome all of these different things. Where did you find the resilience?
That I don't know the answer to that, because while I was going through most of these things in my younger years, I kept everything inside. Okay. So, I never told my parents about the abuse that I endured. I never told anyone the situation that I lived with my first husband and his illness. Okay. He was extremely paranoid, terrified of the world around him. He thought everything was covered with germs that were going to harm him. He would close the windows and the shades. He was afraid of the outside world. But it was a secret. I didn't want my parents to worry about me. I didn't really understand what mental illness was at that time. Okay. And I just kind of accepted it as each day went on. And I probably, looking back, the best thing that happened to me was when he left me, I had to figure out how to become a strong person and take care of myself and not be afraid to express my feelings.
Now, did you feel like you weren't strong during that relationship? I mean, it sounds to me like you were strong enough to endure all of that, but not just endure, but to also overcome it. So what was the difference between, how did you feel like when you were going through that and when he left? What was the difference?
Well, I was suffering when I was going through that.
Okay.
Definitely. And then when he left, I was suffering even more because I was filled with fear of how I was going to go on in life by myself, without a father for my children. And it was just amazing, though, because once I reached out to the world and started to go to these support groups, I realized that there reached a point where I didn't need anyone to take care of me. I realized I could get up in the morning, get my children ready for school, go to my job, come home, help with homework, do everything that a mother's supposed to do, collapse of exhaustion. But suddenly I realized that I could do it. And that really wasn't until I was in my early 30s.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So you mentioned the support groups. How did you find out about them? Like, was it very well known that there are certain support groups for the things that you wanted to go to?
No, not really. But it was a support group through my church.
Oh, okay.
It was a group for divorced and separated Catholics.
Okay.
So what happened was I went to the group, and then when I heard other people's stories, I could understand what they were going through, and I bonded with them, and I made friends. I made some other single mothers became my friends.
Wow.
And we were able to walk with each other, through the things that came up.
That must have given you the support. Was not only, I would imagine, not just from them, but also seeing other people who were at different stages, whether they were at the same stage you were currently at and later. So I'm sure that probably helped you as well.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
Did you, was that the only support group that you joined, or did you join other ones?
I also became a member of Parents Without Partners.
Oh, okay. I don't know that. I've never heard of that group. But it seems like Parents Without Partners, or
it's something involving your children.
Oh, okay.
They have activities for children of the single parents. So you would bring your children to get involved, and then you would meet other single people.
Oh, and,
I actually met the first gentleman that I dated after my husband left me.
Oh, okay.
And so that was another step forward.
Well, awesome. So all of these things that you're talking about are in the book. When you were deciding on what to include in the book, were there things that you did not include because for whatever reason, or is everything in there? Or do you feel like it's after writing the book, there's more you could add? How do you feel about what's in the book, and how did you come to include those things?
Well, all through the years, being a single mother, and then I met my second husband, Ray, and we married, and we had a blended family.
Okay.
My daughters, and he had a daughter and a son, and his son came to live with us.
Okay.
And we had more challenges than anyone could ever believe what the children went through. My stepchildren were kidnapped for 1 year by their mother because Ray had been granted custody of them, and they weren't found for a year. And that was very, very stressful for them, especially for my stepson. He was older at the time. He was about 12 years old. And all I can think of when I retired was, I have to give a message to the world. When I was a teacher, I could impact lives and make a difference with those little children.
Right.
In first grade, when I was a teacher of first grade, I could teach them how to read. They would come in maybe knowing the alphabet, but by the time 6 months or the year was over, you were just thrilled with how you changed their lives and saw them excited about getting books and reading them. So I had this idea, how can I still impact the world, do something? And so with my book, I basically started because I wanted people to understand if you're going to go through with that divorce, put your children first and don't fight over child support and custody, because the children will strive for the love of both of their parents for the rest of their lives. And as a teacher, with divorce being about 50% rate, I've seen a lot of my young students suffering as well as my daughters.
And so
I wanted to give, that's how I started. I wanted to give the message about how to save children in our society today from the detrimental effects of divorce.
And that's what your book initially, that was the foundation.
Then as I sat down and I started thinking about my life and everything, I didn't plan on it, but suddenly the image of my uncle coming into my bedroom came into my mind. And so I had to start with that. It happened more than 50 years ago, and I have never forgotten it. Almost every day of my life, I relived the fear and the fright because I did not know what to do to stop it. And when I hear women come forward after many years on the news channels today, talking about politicians and what's going on, I instantly bond with those women, and I understand. Some people don't understand. Well, if that's true, why didn't you come and tell someone?
Right. And it's very different. 50 years ago is very different from the environment now.
That's true.
So I can understand how that would be difficult. I know you said you did not tell your parents, but even if you had told them, it's a very different, that's a very different time. So who knows what would have happened.
Right. No one gave me any instructions. By the time my children were little, I told them right away, as soon as they could speak, because of my experience.
Right.
If anybody tries to touch you, come and tell mommy right away. They're not allowed to do this or that. And and then in the schools, we also had people come into the classroom and talk about things like that.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
okay.
Even in the school system. So things changed, and as you said, people became more able to speak about these things.
Right. I know we have about a minute left, so in the next segment, we'll talk a little bit more about the other parts of your book and how people can contact you. But one last question, just following up on the structure of the book, and you can make it very quick because we only have a few seconds. Once you said you started with, you started initially like trying to teach people and their children about divorce and to prevent them from having bad things happen to them as later on as a consequence. But then your uncle's vision came to your mind, and all the other things after that. How did those very quickly, like how did the structure of the book happen after that? Did it just come naturally?
What happened was, one chapter after another, yes, I often changed the subject, and I was wondering if the reader was going to keep track of what I was trying to do.
Okay.
But a teacher's survival, finding balance through the storms. The balance that I talk about there is finding the balance between my personal life and everything that was going on, and the traumatic events that I also experienced in my career as a teacher of young children. Because I'd like to talk a little bit about that.
Perfect. Well, that's a great ending point. We'll talk a little bit more about that after the break. But this is Dustins Kaleidoscope. I am Dustin, and we will see you in a few moments.
After 17 years working as a mason, Mike was laid off. I met him when he came into the library looking for help. He found a job opening, but the application was only online. Mike said he'd spent his entire life around tools, but had never used a computer. I showed him how, and he ended up applying for numerous jobs online. I saw Mike the other day. His new computer skills paid off. He's working again.
New Jersey libraries are transforming lives. Tell us your story.
Hi, and welcome back to Dustin's Kaleidoscope. I am Dustin, and I am here today with Hope Brooks. And she's telling us a little bit about, actually more than a little bit, you're telling us about your book and how you structured it and how you came up with the book itself. So at the end of the break, you were telling us a little bit about how you continued with the structure of the book. And you said it started, the rest of the book was based on the fact that you were teaching. So can you continue there, like you had retired from teaching?
Yes. Okay, so often I would have a chapter about what's going on in my personal life with the children or with the divorce situation and going to court with my ex-husband over child support, things like that. And then sometimes I would follow up with a chapter of what happened in my classroom. So, for instance, I was driving to work one day to my school, and I hear on the radio that there was a fire in a home nearby in Staten Island where I worked.
Okay.
And the father got 3 of the 4 children out of the house, and the 4th child died. Mm-hmm. And as I was driving to my job, I thought, that's really sad. I wonder if that was anywhere near my school. And so when I get to school, my principal calls me in. He sits me down in a chair. He says, Hope, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Jessie in your class died last night. And I don't know what to tell you, but could you please handle this with your students?
Wow.
Wow. I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know what to do. And so I get into the classroom, and all day long I'm just looking at the empty seat of Jessie, ready to burst out in tears, until at the near the end of the day, I gathered all the children together in a circle, and I told them what happened, and they came out with such love and compassion. It was a good experience in that way, but they all begged could they have something from Jessie to remember him by. And so that's just like a typical day. Right. Many of the things that happen in your classroom.
But there's no preparation, there's no training for that. I mean, basically,
exactly.
You were told, take care of this.
Exactly.
Without any guidance. I mean, so it seems like your life, you have been thrown a lot of things that you've had to figure out yourself.
Exactly.
And it sounds like you've put a lot of those things in your book. Can you hold up your book for a second just so we can see it? And the book it's by you, Hope Brooks, on Mother's Survival.
Yes.
So you can put it down. I don't want you to have to hold it the whole time.
I would like to just tell briefly, if I could keep it brief, one of the other traumatic events that
absolutely.
There's actually the chapter entitled September 11th in a Staten Island School. And in my school in Staten Island, one of my coworkers came running into the classroom and told me the Twin Towers had just been hit. And we could see the smoke coming from outside the window of our classroom.
From Staten Island?
Yes, from Staten Island. And parents came taking their children out of school right away. They didn't know if things were going to be safe, if the bridges were going to be safe. And I managed to get home, even though the Goethals Bridge was closed for a long time because they were afraid that there was going to be explosives under it. Okay. The next day I come back to the classroom. Children are very quiet. They understand that there's been a traumatic event. And when I get into school, there's a letter in my mailbox from a parent. And a boy in my class, his father was a firefighter, and he was killed that day.
Wow.
So she asked me to say prayers, and she was going to get him the help that he needed. And I was devastated even to go back before I even went into the class. And so I get into the classroom, and the children, again, are very quiet. And one of the children raises his hand, and he says, Mrs. Brooks, my soccer coach was in the airplane that the bad people hijacked. Oh. And now he's not going to, Mr. David is gone, and I'll never see him again.
Wow.
Oh, my God. I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe what I was happening and what I was hearing. And then a third child, Tara, she raises her hand. I mean, I didn't even know enough to ask. You know? And she says, Mrs. Brooks, I heard my mother crying last night. And when I woke up this morning, she told me that Aunt Millie was in the building and she couldn't get down the stairs in time, and my Aunt Millie died.
Wow. So you've had to deal with quite a few tragic.
On these things.
More than most people would deal with in a lifetime.
It was unbelievable, and I'm thinking to myself, what do I tell these children? And
what did you tell them?
I actually told them that for some reason people don't hate each other and treat each other badly and want to harm each other, but someday you are going to be the adults in charge of the world, and I believe that you are going to make this world better. Are you going to be... What's wrong with this society now? People are against each other because of a different religion or a different color, or sometimes people were against women for a long time and they didn't have the right to vote.
Right.
Can you think about it and make the world better?
Yeah. That's just. Like I said in the beginning, there have been, when I was going through, when I was going through your website and just understanding, what you've gone through, I really, like I said, I really wanted to meet you because there's a certain resilience. Like, there are a lot of people who may have gone a different route. They may have addictions, or they may have done other things. What do you think it is about you, other than the fact that you did go to the support group, which sounds like it helped you tremendously? What do you think is inside of you that helped you do everything from seek out a support group to being able to tell children whose family members or coaches had, perished during 9/11, or just the child who did not come to class because he perished in a fire? What is it about you? What do you think it is?
That's a very interesting question. I would say I never really analyzed myself from that point of view, but I would say it's because I was taught as a child that you are going to work very hard at whatever it is you choose to do in your life. Okay. And I guess I just carried that with me. The work ethic, always, just get up in the morning and you try your best and you work for the future. And although I thought I had never wanted to be a teacher, it was a wonderful experience interacting with. There were many positive events as well.
Yes, I'm sure. Yes. And I should mention that.
I should mention.
Yeah, you actually talked about the challenges that you've had, but when we were talking, you also mentioned how they made you stronger. Like how
everything made me stronger.
Right.
But I also want people to understand the jobs that people have in today's society. They often put teachers down, but all the people that I have worked with are the most wonderful, dedicated, hardworking people that you would ever want to meet. Yeah.
You're going to have to write an entire book just about your peers when you were working as a teacher, just to highlight them.
Yes.
Where can people find your book?
You could find it on Amazon.
Okay.
It is a soft cover, and it's also an ebook.
Okay.
So you just put in the title and by Hope Brooks, and it will instantly appear.
Okay, and if people wanted to contact you, there's an email address that you have?
Yes, I would love if they would use my email address.
Okay. And do you have that, or I can put it up later, but do you have it memorized?
It is Brooks 2014 at AOL.com.
Perfect.
And that's H with a capital H, B with a capital B, and the lowercase letters.
Okay, so we'll put that up as well.
Yes.
And do you have a website that people can?
Yes, hopebrooks.com.
Okay, perfect.
And I would love them to look at my website, and I have a lot of information there. And if anyone does read my book, I would appreciate customer reviews. That's very important for writers.
Okay, okay.
We often get rated by Amazon by our number of customer reviews.
Oh, okay. That's wonderful to know. So people go on Amazon and check out the book, or the website to check out more about the book. You mentioned, one thing that I really liked hearing that I think would be beneficial to everyone is that you actually decided to write the book, you said, after you retired, but it was like a moment of stillness, a moment of quiet. So are you saying that was the first time you were a teacher for 38 years, you said?
Yes.
And was that really the first time where you felt like, wow, okay, I can just take a breath and I can actually look at things both, backwards and also in the future and sort of get an idea of what would you suggest other people do? Like, if they don't want to wait 38 years to get into that, to that point where they can sort of have that moment of clarity, if you will.
Let's see. Well, I was thinking about this book all the while I was going through my life, because I would often said to myself, no one would believe what I am going through today. No one would believe it.
Okay.
And I finally, when I worked in Staten Island for 34 years, I was up at 4:30 every morning. I had 3 children to get ready for school.
Oh, wow.
I drove an hour back and forth each way. I never had time for myself at all.
Okay.
And I was kind of afraid to retire after having a busy life. By the time I retired, my children grew up. The children were all grown and everything. And I had to say to myself, what will I do with the rest of my life? So,
and then you decided to write a book. It's wonderful.
I found a writing group and a wonderful writing teacher.
Oh, okay. So we didn't even get a chance to discuss that because we have about a minute and a half left.
Right. So anyone who's planning to retire, you could have a new adventure in life like I did.
How long did it take you to write your book?
It took me 5 years.
Okay, 5 years. So
5 years of constant work.
So you were one of those people who wrote every single day or nearly every single day?
Yes, because I joined a writing group that met 1 day a week.
Oh,
so therefore,
okay.
Every time I went, I was inspired to have something ready to present to the other writers in the group.
Because you certainly couldn't show up with not having done anything.
That would be awfully boring if you had nothing.
Exactly.
So they were my motivation.
So I know we have just a minute left, so I want to. We're actually out of time, but so I want to thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and telling us about your book and some of the different stories in the book, because they're so interesting, and I hope everybody will go and check out your book. Thank you so much for being here, Hope.
Thank you, Dustin.
I'm Dustin Dumas, and this is Dustin's Kaleidoscope, and we will see you next time. Bye.